Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry Peacock. I'm here to talk to you about the season 2 premiere of Carnival Row. That's a series on Prime Video starring Cara Delevingne and Orlando Bloom. It's kind of a steampunk show. It takes place in the late 1800s in an alternate version of London where there are fairy folk living. They're known as the Fae on the show. And the first season was pretty good. So I've been waiting for the second season for a while. And the first two episodes of this second and final season dropped yesterday on Prime. And I want to talk about those. So the first one was called Fight or Flight. And as it starts, we find the Cara Delevingne character, Vignette, cutting a hole in a barbed wire fence on a balcony so that she can go through it and fly up, followed by a pair of her friends, as this is the only way they can leave the Row, Carnival Row, which is where the Fae folk have been relegated to living by the humans because they don't like them, and which is blockaded on the ground. And they're doing this apparently because they're intent on attacking a train. Meanwhile, Rycroft, the former detective played by Orlando Bloom, who also is half Fae, is watching some kind of underground Fae fight club in action and indeed participating, as he has to fight a troll. And at the start of the fight, he's not doing too well at it. During the train attack, Vignette and her friends encounter some resistance, but deal with them quite handily, and then begin to raid the storage compartment on the train to steal something in jars, which apparently is medicine, intended for a ward full of sick pixies back on the Row. That's what Cara is. She's a pixie. She has wings. And think Tinkerbell. She's a pixie. That's what they call it. Back at the fight, using a 2x4, Rycroft is able to fell the troll, and now the operator of the fight club apparently owes him a favor because he won. Vignette returns home to Rycroft. They're a couple, and it turns out that they both need a bath. We're then taken to the scene of what intends to be a mass beheading of 5 Puck Fae guys. Now, the Puck Fae are Fae that have cloven hooves and like ram's horns on their heads. And these particular 5 Fae, these 5 Puck, apparently killed some folks. And of course, this scene ends up being exactly that, a mass beheading, as a huge blade swings down left to right, decapitating the 5 Pucks simultaneously, rather gruesomely, by order of the new chancellor, whose father was apparently the previous chancellor and apparently one of the folks killed by these Puck. The 5 heads are then taken to the Row and hung on spikes on a wall, apparently as an intended deterrent to further violence or shenanigans on behalf of the Fae. It turns out, though, that the Pucks who were killed aren't the ones who killed the Chancellor's parents, and the Chancellor knew it. So he's a dirty birdie, this guy. One of his underlings, who is apparently sympathetic to the Fae, goes to the Row to visit Rycroft, but isn't well received by everyone there. It would seem that Rycroft wanted the Chancellor to come to the Row, but despite the efforts of the sympathetic underling, he isn't going to come. It also appears to be the case that Rycroft is determined to go public with the fact that he's half Fae, because the Chancellor is his half brother, and so he wants to stir the shit and cause the Chancellor problems if he's not going to treat the Fae folk properly, I guess. Meanwhile, a pixie Fae named Tourmaline comes upon a building that seems to house the spirit of another Fae with glowing blue eyes, and when she touches the door, she gets a vision. Next, we see Vignette joining the Black Raven Order, which is a group of pixies that kind of operate kind of like soldiers, and she gets branded as an initiation. Later, Tourmaline gets another vision of the Fae with the glowing eyes, at which point she sees this Fae breathe some kind of blue smoke into her, which turns her eyes all blue, causing her to black out and kill somebody's cat rather brutally without realizing it. Next, Rycroft is grabbed at his home and taken to the scene of a crime where his former colleague, a cop, apparently wants his help solving a brutal murder. Of course, his colleague's superior isn't thrilled to see him, given that he's Fae. We then go to a ship at sea where a human named Imogen, who is a very proper upper crust hoity-toity lady, who is in a relationship with a Puck named Agreus, who is also a wealthy person, has a nightmare of her brother killing her before waking up and having a conversation with Agreus about whether or not they should make port to try to build their lives or stay at sea, the latter of which happens to be her preference. Right then, their vessel is beset by a dirigible, which demands that the ship follow it. And that's where the first episode ends. The second episode was called New Dawn, and as it begins, the aforementioned couple are taken to the ruins of Ragusa, a port of the city or nation that the dirigible is from, called the Pact. Apparently, Agreus' ship has been commandeered and his possessions are being rifled through by soldiers. And then they separate the couple. Back to London, or the Burg as it's called, it turns out that the dead guy that Rycroft was brought to see is a guy that Vignette prevented her fellow train robber from killing during the robbery, yet somehow he's dead. Vignette and Rycroft then have a disagreement about something that he's going to do that she doesn't want him to do, that being him coming out as part Fae. Back with Imogen, she's apparently taken to another part of the city where everything is harmonious, including humans and Fae living together, apparently. She's then left in someone's house where she learns a little bit about what's been going on in this land from the cook. At the same time, Agreus is put before a firing squad with a bunch of other people, but is the only one not killed. Apparently, the Burg is facing a threat called the New Dawn, which is an alliance of Fae and humans, and they're seeking help from the Pact in the form of weapons. Back with Rycroft, he goes to visit his friend Darius, who had been in prison for some time despite his own efforts to get him out, which he eventually did, and lets him in on his plan to out himself and somehow simultaneously free the people of the Row. Meanwhile, the Chancellor's girlfriend makes a deal with the Pact to help them against New Dawn in a way that will enrich herself. While going about her business on the road, Tourmaline has yet another episode where her eyes go all blue and she kills an animal with her bare hands, and then wakes up in the building where she first encountered the vision of the lady with the blue eyes. Back to Agreus, he and Imogen are reunited and placed in a home that they're going to have to share with other families. Tourmaline then goes to see her grandmother, who is some kind of mystic or whatever, apparently to see if she can figure out what's going on, and it would seem that she's been possessed by a dead character called Horace Beck, the lady with the blue eyes, who in life could apparently be hired to cause others to do the bidding of those hiring her. And it would seem that she was given the powers of this person when they died because she was present at her death. Now, this, I think, is something that happened during the first season, but it was so long ago that I forgot about it. Anyway, that's what's going on with her. Vignette and the Pixie Ninja Ravens decide to make a raid on the Burg, and though Vignette wants to lead the raid herself so that the leader of the Ravens doesn't have to risk her life, the leader doesn't allow her to. She thinks she's trying to be an upstart, so she says, yeah, no, I'm going to do it. At some kind of gala in the Burg, Rycroft goes about his plan to expose himself as half Fae. Before he's able to do that, though, the Ravens storm the gala and show them one of the pixies that are dying from what they've caused. So his plot was foiled because his girlfriend decided that her and her people needed to have a raid on this same gala to, cause trouble. When that pixie who's dying tries to get closer to one of the dignitaries at the gala, she's shot and killed. Rycroft returns home to Vignette, but then there's a knock at the door from two of the other ravens, and apparently two of the ravens have been killed, one of them being the leader, and their heads have been spiked on the wall. And that's where the second episode ended. So this is a really good show. The aesthetics are gorgeous. Like I said, it takes place in the late 1800s, and, it just looks gorgeous. The costuming and the setting and everything are really gorgeous. The Fae characters are excellently done. The pixies are gorgeous. I keep using that word. The pucks are very elegant and interesting looking. And there are other Fae types, but those are the two main ones. And, it's basically a show about the haves and the have-nots, and those in power against those not in power, and the reasons for that dichotomy, which are basically prejudice. And it's about a guy caught between those two worlds, not only because he's in love with the Fae, but because he's half Fae. And it's about all the machinations thereof, and that includes, sort of like warring nations, which behave more like factions than cities in the same country, which is kind of weird. The story is very layered, so it's sort of hard to comment on it without saying the same things over and over again from week to week in terms of the impact or the meaning of what's happening, because it's going to be pretty much the same from week to week. So I don't know that I'll be reviewing the whole season. I may come back and just do the series finale and, give an overview of the season, depending on what happens in the episodes. They're going to release 2 at a time until they release them all, and it's kind of a lot to watch and then talk about week to week because I have other shows and stuff to review. So I don't know if I'm going to do this whole season, but I wanted to do the premiere because it is a good show. And like I said, I might come back and do the end. But, if you're a fan of these types of stories, which, are stories we've seen before, but which always tend to be good and, insightful in some way about the human condition, then this is a show for you. Orlando Bloom is excellent. CARA DELVIGNE is excellent. And it's just a really good show with a love story at the center, which is always good as well. So If you haven't seen the show, you can check out the first season on Amazon Prime. And like I said, the second season just started. It is going to be the final season. So, yeah, you should check it out. But that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to get out of here for now. I'll be back with another video soon. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.